I want to go to what I'm supposed to be discussing. And I'm first of all having maybe sharing of the screen. So as you can see there, we have, I'm already doing my first part on my introduction. I want to go to the changes. After that, I'll go to the changes in certain KCSE exam, because you realize that since 2017, we have the performance of biology having declined. After that, we shall go to the third area, and that is on the reasons why we have candidates performing poorly in biology, paper 1. So when you look at biology, paper 1, this is paper that is normally, and this paper normally contributes. This is the paper that is given to us, and in most cases, we have about 28 questions that are set, and these questions that are set normally cover a wide area. In fact, from Form 1 to Form 4, all the areas are tested in biology paper 1. And this paper normally has structured questions that carry maximum maybe 4 or 5 marks, and all the questions are compulsory. What is the importance of the marks that are allocated at the end of each question? To our candidates, it is very important that the students first of all check the number of marks that are awarded as per the item, because you find that marks should be assigned by the candidate.
Sorry to interrupt. Please, can other teachers unmute? Sorry, can they mute so that we can only have Teresia, Madam Teresia talking? Okay, continue.
So I was saying that in biology paper 1, you normally find each of the questions being awarded a certain number of marks. And it is very important that our candidates are able to check on this, because it acts as a guide in order for the candidate to know the number of marks that they are supposed to give in every question. Such that, for example, if you look at a question where they are told to explain why something happens, the number of marks are going to guide the candidate to know how many reasons they are expected to give as per that particular question. So now you can get straight to changes that have been made in the setting, maybe biology examination. And in fact, that is why now you realize that because most of us have not been able to note or to understand those changes, we have that dismal performance in biology. That we have a lot of emphasis being laid on the understanding of the biology content, as opposed to memorizing of facts and information. In order for the learners to understand the concepts, you realize that they are following approaches that we as teachers need to take in our teaching, such that our learners will then be able to understand the concept and will not need to memorize. I know we are familiar with some of these methodologies, so I'm just going to share with you some of the methodologies which are being emphasized on in the setting of questions today. One of them is what we are all familiar with: information, communication, and technology, whereby ICT should be integrated in teaching and learning of biology, especially in content areas where you find that actual practicals may not be conducted. If you look at an area, for example, when we are discussing cell division, long time ago, those who are maybe the teachers who in the old system, the old previous system where we used to go up to Form 6, you will find that we used to do those activities on cell division, mitosis and meiosis. And you find that today, not many of us are able to carry out those activities to the students. Therefore, it becomes very abstract when the teacher is struggling to explain the stages in mitosis or meiosis, because learners are only left with their degree of cramming. What the teacher has said is what is going to assess them when it comes to answering of the questions. So it is very important that we carry out activities in order for the learners to be, or we carry out maybe where we cannot be able to carry out activities, we use ICT. You also find that if you look at the modern way of setting questions, we have the examiners, those people who set the exam, they make sure that even some of the photographs and the diagrams that were previously not in the books, like in the area of evolution, because they are even aware that we teachers, when we are teaching, we have very few resources in order to find out whether we have been able to teach properly such that our learners have been able to get the content. You will find them even trying to test on very simple diagrams, which of course have been obtained by use of our simple gadgets like the smartphone. For example, when you look at 2019, we have in biology paper 1, number 17, there was a photograph of two animals that were taken there, and the students were maybe told to explain the possible reason for the differences in the length of the fur. That is a question which was from the topic on evolution, and it gave quite a number of students some blackout because they had not seen such a diagram before. So we are simply saying this, as teachers, even using our gadgets, it is possible to take photographs outside the classroom, bring them to the learners, and when we are setting maybe our mid-term exams, end of term exams, we make use of those diagrams in order for our learners to familiarize themselves with what is being said in the exam. We are talking about this ICT because we are aware that when you use ICT, our learners are more engaged in the learning. We've already seen that it even improves attention amongst the learners, promotes collaboration and teamwork. And other than that, this is a methodology that can be used even to aid or to assist those students with special needs. So this is a methodology that we are familiar with, something that is very interesting even to our learners. And I believe when we make use of it, life will be much easier to our students and performance will be much better. So we can now get to the second methodology, and that is on the use of practicals as opposed to the theory. Learners should be adequately exposed to various tasks and projects, whereby if you look at most of the topics which are normally perceived difficult as well as boring, it is not only to our students, but we can all agree that even as teachers, we have a problem with the same. Therefore, to make these areas more interesting, easy to understand, it is important that we teachers make maybe some effort to organize for some practical activities so that now these activities can be organized in such a way that they are learner-centered. And once our learners are involved in the activities, it therefore means that there will be maximum concentration that is leading to maximum retention, and therefore our learners will not have any problem. The hands-on activities that the learners carry out when they are practicing or when they are doing these actual processes is going to build a lot of confidence amongst the learners. It will also lead to retention of the facts as well as coherent presentation. And this is going to minimize use of wrong ones in biology, as you are coming to see, as well as making spelling mistakes. I do not know whether you're able to see that slide there, where there's some illustration of the life cycle of a housefly. Is it there? Is that slide there?
No, we are actually on the first slide.
Sorry?
We are on the first slide. We are stuck on the first slide.
Hello, people. Apologies for the issue. I am the one sharing the screens on her behalf. I thought you guys were seeing the screen, and I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with a limitation imposed by the admins. So can you be able to see the screen now?
We've been seeing the screen, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, but we are seeing on the first slide where you have the introduction, the biology examination setting and teaching methodologies.
How about now?
On my part, I'm still stuck there on the first slide.
Okay, let me stop sharing and then share it again and see whether we will be okay.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, sharing right now. So, can you guys see me scrolling?
Not yet.
Can you try clicking on the second slide so that we can see whether there's a change that is happening? Eh?
Yeah.
Now it's good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you're on the slide that that says importance of marks allocated in each question.
Yes, that's where we are right now.
Okay, very good.
I think now we can just start from there now that you have the screen so that we can be able to move together.
No.
So I am going back to, and I'm very sorry for what has just happened. Going
No
back
problem.
to the importance of
take all your time. Take all your time.
Yes, importance of go back. Yes, importance of marks allocated per question. When you look at the questions that are set in all the 3 papers in biology, you find that in every question we have the number of the marks that are allocated there. And this is very important because it guides the candidates on how much detail they are supposed to give, such that if it is a question on explaining about something, it will guide the learners to know the number of the reasons to give. This is very important. For example, when you look at what is happening today, we have students being told to distinguish or to differentiate between 2 things. And then in that question, maybe you find only 1 mark being awarded, which therefore means that if they are distinguishing between 2 things and the question has been awarded only 1 mark, they need to be very keen to note that the definition of which or terms that they are defining is correct because they will not be given another mark. Then if the question is also carrying 2 marks, it means that at least this time each of the definition is going to earn 1 mark. Then we can now go to the changes which have been made in the setting of biology examinations. The next slide on the changes made. Go to the changes made in setting and marking of biology examinations. The next slide, please. Next is right, yes. Changes made in setting and the marking of KCSE examination that we have all observed that since 2017, the performance in biology has been very poor. And in fact, we all need to understand that there are certain changes that have been made, especially on the setting of the questions, which you find in the biology examination, whereby what is happening today is that a lot of emphasis has been laid on the understanding of the concepts and as opposed to the memorization of the facts and the information. In order for the learners to understand the concepts, it is very important that we teachers, we struggle as much as possible to change our methodology. You find that some of the methodologies which can lead to more retention, next slide please, more retention of the content is information, communication, and technology, whereby today, go to the next slide, where today we have every person making use of ICT in maybe learning in our daily lives. And you find that ICT should be integrated in teaching and learning of biology, especially in those content areas where you find that it is not possible to do practicals. For example, we have the topic in reproduction when we are introducing cell division. We find that sometimes back those who in the old system, we used to carry out activities on mitosis and meiosis, but from my own observation, I've seen that is something that we don't do. Maybe some of us will talk about lack of resources. Others will talk about lack of adequate time because we know we are always being pushed to cover the syllabus. Also, when you look at the topic like evolution, which is quite abstract, most of us now should make use of the ICT in order to download maybe photographs and diagrams. So if you look at that slide, which has just been removed from there, you can see that the question that was set in 2019, number 17, where students, yes, they were told to give the possible reason for the difference in the length of the farm. These are two animals whose photograph has been taken. They are photographs that, of course, we may not find in the country where we are, but if we download that and we share it with our learners, we can set such a question to them, and then they can practice now that skill of at least knowing that it is not only the diagrams that are always in the textbooks that can be set in the examination. We can get to the next now. So I've already talked about the importance of ICT, where we have talked about ICT making the content that is abstract to be more maybe understanding to the learners. This ICT is going to promote collaboration and teamwork. The other now methodology that you can use, as you can see on the screen there, is use of practicals as opposed to theory work. Learners should be adequately exposed to the various tasks and the projects. And you find that most of the topics that are perceived to be difficult to the learners, you find that they are also boring to them. And even when you look at us teachers, we also find the topics a bit challenging as well as boring. In order to make these topics more interesting, easy to the learners, we teachers, we need to organize practical activities as well as projects, so that now these practical activities that you organize are learner-centered, and because they are learner-centered, in the present, doing very active in the learning, and therefore, this is going to make learning much better for them. Just a moment, please. Sorry for that interruption. So now we are saying that we teachers, we should organize for practicals in order for our learners to be able to understand the content. When you look at that question, which was on the screen there, maybe you can move to the next screen, where we have a question that was set, yes, on the illustration of the life cycle of a housefly. I do not know how many of us as teachers have been able to carry out this activity. It is more or less of a project on observing the various stages of metamorphosis of maybe an insect that undergoes complete metamorphosis, or incomplete metamorphosis. So in 2017, when that question was set, number 5, biology paper 1, we find that most of the candidates could not be able to identify the various stages of the life cycle of a housefly. Then, to make the matters worse, the question further required the candidates to state the differences between the life cycle of the housefly and the cockroach, such that, for example, there were students, when you talk about maybe a structure in a cockroach, in the life cycle of a cockroach, what we call the udeka, most of the candidates may not even have seen that udeka yet. We expect them now to be knowing the stages. So we are saying that as teachers, let us change our methodologies in order for our students to be at par with the modern type of the questions that are being set. We can now get to the next methodology, the next slide, on what we call inquiry-based teaching. I know this is not a new methodology to majority of us, because we know that in Kenya today, we have what we are referring to as SMARS. Those who are in SMARS, you know that this is one of the methodologies that we are advocating, whereby in the inquiry-based teaching, this methodology normally places students' questions, ideas, and observations at the center of the learning experience. It is a student-centered approach, which is more focused on using and learning content as a means to develop information processing and problem-solving skills. The work of the teacher is a facilitator. Our work is only to facilitate the process of learning, and emphasis is normally laid on how we come to know and less on what we know. What you know is normally emphasized when, for example, you become the master of the knowledge and you assume that the learners are just tabula rasas, something that is not advocated for in the inquiry-based learning. So in the inquiry-based learning, you find that it is the learners themselves who identify the problem and they ask questions. Those learners propose solutions. They are also able to make predictions. They are able to design procedures on their own and collect data. They can also organize data and draw conclusions. So when you look at this inquiry-based learning, we have the concept was tested in 2017. Next slide. We have this content having been tested in 2017. Question number 11, such that if we have a school where probably this methodology was not being used, they were only used to being told what happens, majority of them could only score this part on giving 2 examples where the process takes place. At least they can see this is diffusion. This is an activity which is normally done even in chemistry, factors affecting the rate of diffusion. And the last part where students were told to state 2 ways by which the movement of the dye molecules in the setup would be slowed. This one was so challenging to the students because they had not even done that. Maybe if they did the activity on their own, they would have tried to investigate what will happen. For example, they use hot water as opposed to cold water and so forth. So we are saying that it is very important that we are not masters of knowledge, but we just become facilitators in order for our learners to be able to predict, to make explorations on their own. And once they do that, maybe as teachers, we harmonize what they know. In order for this inquiry-based learning to take place, we are saying that learners need to be provided with the right learning environment. We cannot have our learners using inquiry-based teaching when we as teachers, we are emphasizing on only use of one textbook. Back in our schools, just look at what you normally use for teaching. Some of us may be using only a KCSE textbook. simply because maybe that is what is provided in the school. When we are just using one type of a book, it is very difficult for our learners to be able to gain more knowledge from different authors. Other than that, during our time, we used to have even scientific journals, encyclopedias in the library, and I do not know whether such journals and publications that we used to read those days are still available, because when you look at the upcoming schools, especially the day schools, most of us do not even have those libraries, and that is something we need maybe to emphasize to our principals. Maybe they can even struggle, and at least once in a while, when you get a good scientific journal, you can purchase that and then you avail it to your students. We can now go to the next methodology. That is what we do next slide. Thematic teaching. When you are talking about thematic teaching and learning should be embraced, because once it is used, it promotes learning with understanding. When we talk about thematic teaching, what are we talking about? Thematic teaching may be in terms of two ways. One, it may be in terms of rearrangement of the topics in order to have logical flow of concepts. I want us to go back to KCSE book 1. When we are teaching Form 1 biology, we get to the topic on nutrition in plants. We have nutrition in plants, nutrition in animals, and the chemicals of life. If you look at the organization of those topics in our books, we have chemicals of life is normally taught before, nutrition in plants is normally taught before chemicals of life. And that is why maybe when you are revising in Form 4 at a time like now, you will find most of the students saying that they have a problem with the topic on nutrition in plants. Why? It is because we use the wrong approach in teaching that topic. When we are teaching nutrition in plants, photosynthesis, for example, we tell those innocent Form 1s, we have carbon, CO2 combining with HO2 in the presence of light and chlorophyll to form C6, H12O6 plus 6 molecules of oxygen. And yet, these Form 1s do not even know what C6H12O6 is. At least from chemistry knowledge, they know the chemical formula of water and the carbon dioxide as well as oxygen. So we are saying that let us not be glued to the order of the arrangement of the topics in the textbooks, because we need to ensure that the content that we are teaching is building on one another. The other thematic teaching that you normally find is on the relationship between the content that is learned in biology and the content that is learned in the other subjects. For example, we have the topic on evolution, which is normally taught in Form 4 biology. When you look at the same topic, it is taught in Form 1 history. We have also in the evidences of organic evolution. As biology teachers, we normally struggle a lot when we are trying to teach on the evidence of geographical distribution. And yet, this is a concept that is very well understood by the same students when they are learning geography. So it is because of lack of thematic learning amongst our learners that you find students are not able to score in items where such knowledge on linking of the topics is required. So if you look at, for example, what was said last year, number 20, students were told to explain the biological significance of completing a dose of antibiotics. And by the way, this is an area which has been appearing many times since 2016. And you find that most of the candidates who attempted that question, they ended up scoring 1 mark. Why? Because they were able to, because they could not be conclusively articulate how failing to complete a dose leads to the development of resistance and the mutation of pathogens. What does that imply? It implies that candidates are not able to apply, one, the content that they learn in class to real life situations. Two, it also implies that our candidates are not able to link the concept learned in one topic to other topics. So this question is normally expecting that, in other words, it's expecting the candidates to link the concepts that are acquired in the topic on genetics and evolution. I want us now, maybe those are just a few of the methodologies. I know we have many methods that you can use, but generally you find that the modern examination that we have is based on those methodologies. I want us now to go to the next slide on the observations that have been made from when we started the exam that was set in 2016. So we moved to the observations made on certain biology examination since 2016. You've observed that we have originality of the test items, whereby there is no repeating of the test items since 2016. In fact, you find that what used before is that our learners were fond of cramming questions from the past papers because they knew those questions will automatically be brought in their KCSE examination, something that is not there before, that is not there today. When you look at the papers that are being set from maybe 2017, you find that those people who are setting the exam appears as if they have sat down, read all the book, KCSE textbooks from Form 1 to Form 4, in between the lines, such that if, for example, you look at every page of the KCSE textbook, it appears as if a question has been set from every page. So what should we tell our candidates? We must advocate to our candidates that they need to master the textbooks one after one, but not cramming, but mastering the content in their textbooks one after one. Let's move to the next slide. The second observation that is made by looking at the way questions are being set, next slide please, is on comprehensive syllabus coverage. We know that in our schools where we come from, there is normally a deadline for covering the syllabus. Our learners are normally very happy when you tell them that you are through the syllabus because they know that you have given them all that is expected of them. However, despite the fact that they have completed the syllabus, have they completed that syllabus comprehensively? I'm saying this because as we are coming to analyze here, we are going to see that we have certain areas of the syllabus being emphasized on in certain years. So let us, teachers, assist our students to cover the syllabus comprehensively by ensuring that we concentrate on every bit that is in the textbook, whether it is a practical activity, whether it is a project, whether it is an excursion. And then those notes that we give to our learners should be such that once the learners make use of the notes, at least they will be able to answer the KCSE exam questions that will be set from there. Move to the next slide. I want us to look at allocation of the marks in KCSE since 2016, in order for us to know, once our students have not covered the syllabus comprehensively, they may not be able to do well in biology. So when you look at that table that is projected there, you can see that we have Form 1 to Form 4. We have suggested teaching lessons, percentage of the total time that is allocated in that particular year. And then we have suggested we have now, in 2016, the number of marks that were set in paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, then we have the total marks. So normally, we normally have Form 1 work having 116 40-minute lessons. So those are the number of the lessons we spend teaching Form 1. This accounts to only 20% of the total time that is spent by the biology student doing biology. Then when it comes to allocation of the marks, what used to happen 2016 backwards is that we teachers, we knew Form 1 work is going to carry 52 marks. Then as per the allocation of these 52 marks, paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, it used to vary, but at the end of it all, we were supposed to have at least around 52 marks. So in 2016, we had 53 marks that were being set from Form 1 work. Form 2 work, we had 54 marks instead of 52. Form 3 work, we had 60 marks instead of 58. Form 4 work, we had 53 marks instead of 48. So you can see we do not have a lot of variation, such that once, for example, the students and done biology paper 1, and you find that only 10 marks were set from biology paper 1 from Form 1 work. Those students previously couldn't be able to predict that in biology paper 2, we are likely to have around 40 marks or so, even paper 2 and paper 3 are sharing now, the rest 42 marks. And those predictions used to be okay. And in fact, students used to use those predictions, and that is why you'll find them doing very well. When you now move to 2017, when now things started going bad on our side, move to the next slide on 2017, you'll find that Form 1 work was carrying 69 marks instead of 52 marks. Form 2 work was carrying 53 marks instead of 52, not a lot of difference. Form 3 work, 42 marks instead of 58. Then Form 4 work, we had 56 instead of 48. So you can see here, any candidate who had not covered Form 1 work and Form 4 worked very well was at a disadvantage, because you can see more than a half of the content that was tested in 2017 was being set from Form 1 and Form 4 work. Next slide on 2018. In 2018, things were different. Form 1 work was carrying 29 marks, and we say normally it's supposed to carry 52 marks. Form 2 work was carrying 68 marks instead of 52. Form 3 work was carrying 56 marks instead of 58. Form 4 work was carrying 67 instead of 48. So you can see now, Form 1 work and Form 4 work, again, no, sorry. Form 2 work and Form 4 work was more emphasized on. So any candidate, for example, if there was any school that had not completed the syllabus adequately, the students were disadvantaged. Then any candidate who had not mastered Form 2 work was also disadvantaged. We moved to 2019. In 2019, we have Form 1 work was taking 65 marks, Form 2 work 60, Form 3 43, Form 4 52. So you can see a lot of emphasis this time was on Form 1, Form 2 work. Let's move now to last year's exam. Last year's exam, we had different things. Form 1 work this time was carrying only 33 marks. Form 2, we had 78 marks. Form 3, we had 76 marks. Form 4, we had 34 marks. So a lot of emphasis was laid in Form 2 and Form 3 work. And this is now different from what we used to have in 2016 backwards. So what does this tell us, teachers? This is an indicator that we as teachers, we must ensure that all the topics, all the activities that you find in the 4 classes are given equal attention during teaching and learning, as opposed to what some of us have been doing, whereby we have what we refer to as selective approach, such that we predict questions to our candidates instead of ensuring that we encourage them to make sure that all the areas they are fully prepared on the same. I know it's because of several reasons. Some of them we all know, like covering the syllabus with a lot of pressure, lack of facilities. But what we need to do is that, for example, if we have an activity whereby maybe we do not have those facilities, we can maybe use of what we have talked about ICT. And if the worst even comes to the worst, we can at least attempt to discuss that practical activity with the students. And once we do that, I know our learners will have covered the syllabus comprehensively, and then they will not be at a disadvantage when, for example, we have certain areas of the syllabus being emphasized on more than the others. Let's now go to the third observation, the next slide. And this is on next slide. We have some changes that have been made, the next slide, on the domains, which are now being tested in KCSE exam. We know that throughout the syllabus, there are 3 main domains that are normally emphasized on as our students complete or cover the syllabus. The first one is what is referred to as affective domain. And this is normally not tested in any paper. It has not been tested, and it has so far not been tested. However, as teachers, we can be able to know maybe the attitude of the students when towards biology by observing the students' behavior when, for example, they are teaching. This affective domain is the one that normally focuses on encouraging the development of factors such as students' feelings, motivations, attitudes, perceptions, and values towards the material they are learning. So when, for example, you go to a biology class, maybe they are just from an outing, and you find all of them chewing. They have bought some chewing gums and they are chewing. As a biology teacher, you should be able to know that your biology content has not added any value to your learners because they know the effect of chewing. We know that when, for example, we have arrival of food in the stomach, anytime we have the walls of the stomach being secreted to secrete, being stimulated to secrete gastric juice. And one of the components of the gastric juice is dilute hydrochloric acid. That is why maybe probably we have so many students today who are suffering from, they talk about having acid. They cannot eat maybe there in the school because they have acid. They suffer from gastritis. I think somebody needs to carry out some research and they find out why we are having so many students today having gastritis. Maybe that is one of the ways to show that that biology content you have given your learners has not even added any value to them because they have not changed in whatever they do. The next domain, which has been tested, and we has also been, there are some changes that has taken place in the testing of the same, is psychomotor domain. And psychomotor domain was initially, previously from 2016 backwards, it used to be tested in only biology paper 3. So this psychomotor domain is normally today, it is normally assessed in all the papers through, for example, recording of accurate informations and measurements. It may be maybe an experimental setup that they have been given. We also have proper handling of instrument and materials and specimen. We have correct drawing of observed features of a given specimen, organization and presentation of data, which of course is normally, this one is a compulsory question in biology paper 2. And we find that even today, we have the same being emphasized even in biology paper 1. So what has been observed today is that a lot of emphasis is being made on practical work in order for the students to familiarize themselves with the apparatus. And this practical work is not only being tested in biology paper 3. It is because of lack of this practical work that we are saying that our learners are just cramming concepts, and this is leading to poor mastery of content. I now want us to look at the last domain, that is the cognitive domain. And this is an area where a lot of change has been made. So allow me first of all to take you through the main areas that are assessed in the cognitive domain. In cognitive domain, this one normally checks or assesses the learners on how much biology do these students understand. This one is normally assessed in 6 levels. We have the lowest level that we call the knowledge level. And The knowledge level is this level that you find questions being set in biology such that candidates are only expected to recall specific facts and information. There is no explaining, just a matter of memory, remembering what their teacher taught them, remembering what they have crammed. And this is the lowest level of understanding, and it earns very few marks. And in these questions, you find certain verbs like give, name, state, mention, list, etc. These are the kind of the verbs that you find in these questions. And as we are coming to see, when you'll be looking at the analysis of what is being said today, we are going to see that before 2016 backwards, we have many questions in biology paper 1 were set using these verbs, whereby learners were only required to recall those specific facts and information with very minimal explanation. The next one is comprehension. And in comprehension, candidates are tested on their ability to understand the content, and then they explain that particular content. The answer they give, they are explaining the answer in their own ways. They are not expected to cram, for example, describe the process of digestion of carbohydrates. Because if they make a mistake of cramming that, somewhere on the way they are likely to get lost. That is why now the candidates must understand the process, and then they explain in their own ones. It's not like in the definitions where they put word after word. Some of the verbs that are used in setting such questions, we have explained, discuss, describe, identify, indicate, and so forth. Next, we move to the next slide on application. In fact, when you look at comprehension and application downwards, that is what is being used today, as we are coming to see. In application, the candidates are required to apply the knowledge that they have learned in class to another new situation. Learners are expected to understand the content, and then if they are given a new situation, they use that information that they have already learned, and then they answer that particular question. And this is an area where we have seen that our students are very weak at. In fact, like last year's exam, there was quite a lot that was expected on application. Some of the verbs that are used in certain questions and application are you apply, choose, demonstrate, sketch, illustrate, compare. I want to give an example of this question, which was set last year, where students were told to sketch and graph to show, I think it was the effect of temperature on something to be the rate of diffusion or something like that. And when they are told to sketch and graph, they are not to sketch and graph, they have a lot of problems. Again, in biology paper 1, there's a question where students were told to sketch, maybe how short-sightedness can be corrected. They had a lot of trouble in answering that question, meaning they cannot apply what they have been taught to another situation. The other level is what we call analysis. And in analysis, this one involves learners or candidates understanding the content, breaking down that piece of information into a clear message, and then they relate it to a new situation. Previously, this is a question that used to be tested only in biology paper 2, question number 6. But today, you will find that question being set in other papers. And what our candidates fail to understand is that in analysis type of questions, we have marks being awarded in stages, whereby if the first stage is missing, you will find that the candidate is not going to score any mark. So it is important that we emphasize to our candidates that in analysis type of questions, we have marks being awarded in stages. That is why, again, as we are coming to note, when you look at biology questions where students are expected to calculate, they are not doing very well in such questions because maybe probably some of them could be having negative attitude towards mathematics. But again, we are saying that it's because they are not able to do analysis, or they don't understand this level very well. Then we have synthesis. When we are talking about the synthesis level of cognitive domain, we are saying that the candidate should be able to bring together parts of knowledge in order to form a whole and build relationships from that new situation. So students are expected to use the given facts to create a new theory or to make predictions at this level. And in fact, when you look at what we had before COVID-19 struck, we had activities like science and engineering fair, whereby you could have students coming up with the projects. Teachers also could assist the students to come up with the projects. Then the students could explore on their own. Then they come up with maybe mathematics formula that are not in the textbooks, and then they present the same. This is one of the areas where maybe this level could be thoroughly practiced by the students. And that's why, for example, you find that if you have any candidate who has been able to make up to the nationals level in the science and engineering fair, you'll find that those students automatically do very well because they can be able to answer questions on this high level of learning. In synthesis level, you find the verbs which are normally used in setting questions, verbs like predict. When students are told to predict, to construct, for example, dichotomous key, you have seen what is happening because our students have not practiced on that. Then lastly, we have evaluation, whereby in evaluation, this is the ability of giving values and then making a reasonable judgment out of them. And we have several areas where evaluation has been tested. And one thing I want you to appreciate, my colleagues, is that our learners may not be understanding these levels. But here as teachers, because we know them, we can assist them to be able to answer such questions on the same, because we need to emphasize on the questions, on diagrams, photographs, and the tables, because these are the areas where a lot of evaluation must be made by the candidate in order for this student to make the right judgment on the response that they give. So, yes, can I continue? Yes, we have verbs like compare, estimate, predict, make value, and so forth. So, what we are simply saying from what I've just been discussing is that we have knowledge, comprehension, application. The first three are referred to as low order thinking skills because the candidates are not required to do a lot of thinking. Whereas when you look at the last three, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, they are referred to as the high order thinking skills, whereby now candidates are required to make a lot of critical thinking, apply what they have learned in class in order to answer those questions. And I've already emphasized that we have high order thinking skills being tested in those questions that deal with tables, diagrams, and graphs. I know all of us have been able to see that from 2017, there's a certain question that has been set on use of a table. And that question has been set from 2017 up to last year. Although there has been slight change in the concept, you'll find that that is a question which has always been poorly scored in our students. So we are simply saying that the kind of the candidates we have today, they are not able to answer questions that require an extra effort to comprehend, to interpret, to infer, and probably that could be as a result of what you normally do. So we are saying that we need to expose our learners to questions that use verbs like, suppose this and this happens. Imagine, propose another way from your own understanding. In the event that, what do you think if, and so forth. Maybe we can go to the next bit that is going to be an application of what you are discussing. Go to the next slide on the other observation. And when you look at that observation, we shall now be able to see how those levels have been used in setting medium questions. That there has been some changes on the use of table specification when setting questions in KCSE. We are aware of what table specification is. This is a table that shows the topics covered in biology syllabus, the time allocated in those in various topics. In terms of lessons, we have the percentage time, which is allocated, suggested marks allocated, and the levels tested in the cognitive domain. When you look at the topics, and go to that is the next slide, where we have the topics that are tested. I'm through with that. Go to the next slide, yes, that one. When you look at the biology syllabus, we normally have 17 teaching lessons, whereby from Form 1 to Form 4, we have 559 40-minute lessons. And then this table of specification now is very important to us as teachers because, for example, when you look at a topic like cell physiology, when we are setting end of term exam, which is made up of 3 papers, because this one carries only 20, it has only 20 40-minute lessons, 4% of the entire teaching time for biology syllabus, 8 marks, and just 10 marks allocation is 8. When we are setting our papers, we need to ensure that at least there is a bit in cell physiology paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, and at least if when we add all the marks, we should not have at least 20 marks from the topic on cell physiology. Similarly, when it comes to the skills, as we set those questions, we need to check how many questions, how many marks are testing knowledge level, comprehension level, application level, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Because we are saying that what we are seeing today starts with us teachers. When we are setting our exams, let us take time and check the levels that we are testing. If we are testing questions that are dealing with maybe knowledge level alone, we are saying that our students will be disadvantaged because they have not done practice on questions on analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And that is why now we as teachers, we are teachers, we shall keep on blaming the examiners being strict, and we are the same teachers, we are the same examiners, and yet the question has not changed. What has changed is the level on what is being examined on. So we are saying that this table of specification is very important because, next slide, it enables candidates to predict the areas to prepare for in the various papers. It also enables candidates and teachers to know the time to allocate in the various topics. And then as teachers, when we are constructing a biology exam, we ensure that we follow that table of specification, and then we need to lay more emphasis on the high order thinking skills as opposed to the low order thinking skills in order for our students to be at par with the changes in the setting of the exam. I want us now to look at how those 6 skills have been tested since 2016, so that we can all see that the problem is that not the examination, the exam has become difficult, not that we teachers have not been teaching, but it is probably because of our emphasis on what needed to be understood by the students. 2016 is the last time when we biology teachers celebrated about our performance. And in 2016, we had a lot of weight having been laid on knowledge level. Those questions where students were only required to recall. The information as they have learned, as they have crammed, were carrying 109 marks out of 220 marks. It is out of 220 marks because paper 1 is normally out of 80 marks. Paper 2, it is 80 plus that other question they have not answered. Remember, there are 2 essay questions. That's why we have 100 there. And then paper 3, we have 40 marks, totaling to 220. So when you look at synthesis, there was only 1 question, and that was tested in biology paper 1. When you look at evaluation, it was not tested after in the 3 papers. Analysis and application was carrying only that 1 marks. Then knowledge and the comprehension carried most of the weight. 2017, that is when now our problems started. The biology teachers, when we started scoring E's and D minuses. Why? When you look at the lowest level, recall, only 26 marks were set from just remembering what the student and crammed, memorized. Paper 1, we had 16 marks. Paper 2, we had 10 marks. paper 3, no mark. When we come to comprehension, 26 marks were inset in paper 1, 43 marks in paper 2, no mark in paper 3, total 69. Application and analysis, 27 marks, paper 1, 15 marks, paper 2, 11 marks, paper 3, total 53. Synthesis, for the first time, we end questions on synthesis being set, 11 marks, paper 1, 12 marks, paper 2, 29 marks, paper 3, total 53. And then when you look at evaluation, that test didn't give students a lot of help, even as teachers. In fact, if we were told to answer that question, if you were sincere with ourselves, it would have also given us a lot of trouble. And that test was carrying 20 marks, but thank God, students were expected to choose, and most of them never chose that particular question. So you can see a lot of weight was given to comprehension, application, and analysis. We also have something in synthesis, 2017. 2018, next slide. In 2018, we ended knowledge level was carrying 43 marks. Comprehension level now, you can see 104 marks. Application and analysis, 64 marks. So this candidate who was very poor at the comprehension, application, and analysis was in great trouble because out of 220 marks, 168 marks were covering those two areas. Synthesis, this time they decided to reduce the number of marks. We had only 6 marks, and then evaluation, we had 3 marks. That's what we had in 2018. So I think now things were much better as compared to 2017. 2019, next slide. 2019, now you can see the knowledge level now is continuously going down. Only 18 marks, where students were expected to recall, memorize. Comprehension, we're in trouble again, 69 marks. Application and analysis, 88. Synthesis, we ended at 2, 24 marks in paper 2, 8 marks in paper 3, total at 2. Evaluation again, 6 marks paper 1, 9 marks paper 2, no mark in paper 3, total 15 marks. So you can see now, in 2019, again, we have comprehension, application, and analysis, some bit of synthesis. Let's look at what happened last year, 2020. Next slide. We all agree that when you look at last year's exam, as teachers, we were very happy when we did the 3 papers because we saw things were becoming much better for us. And despite that, even the candidates themselves, they attested that the paper was much easier in comparison to what they have been seeing before. But despite all that, you cannot agree with me that we never got better results as we expected. At least things improved, but not as we expected, because one, when you look at the knowledge level, we had those students who are only good at cramming, they could be able to get in the 3 papers 34 marks out of 220. Comprehension, 73 marks. Application and analysis, 85 marks. Synthesis, 7 marks. Evaluation, only 1 mark. So again, you can see comprehension, application, and analysis. Then synthesis is also finally coming. So in our case, we do not know the area that will be emphasized on, but from common sense on the trend that we have seen from 2017, we can automatically guess that 1, knowledge level type of questions is slowly diminishing, leaving us with comprehension, application, and analysis. And our students will not be able to answer questions on comprehension, application, and analysis if the approach that we have used in teaching that particular concept has not assisted our candidates in order to master the content. We need to use the right approach in order for our students to be able to master the content very well. I want us to move to the next observation that has been made since 2017. Next slide. Learners, yeah, we are there. Learners are not able to apply the content that they have learned in class to new situations. And this is, of course, due to poor mastery of content, whereby you have seen that when, for example, as a teacher, you are teaching a very simple concept like cell physiology. This is something that they have all observed. As we are teaching, we need now to take our learners out of the class and take them to a real life situation. For example, they must have observed in their homes, for example, when their mothers buy carrots and they keep them for a day or so, they decide now to dip them in a basin containing water. When they buy kales from the market and they are not preparing or cooking those kales that particular day, they will prefer imagine them in a basin that is containing water. We need to explain to our learners. They need to understand why that is being done. So let our learners relate what they are doing in class to what they see outside. Similarly, when we come to a topic like ecology, this is a topic that I can assure you, my fellow colleagues, that this is a topic that cannot be taught in class. You cannot teach students how to estimate the population of a certain maybe plant when we are in class. This is an area where we need to expose our students to field trips, excursions, in order for them to relate that which they are learning to what they are seeing outside there. That is why, again, we are saying, when you look at this area that is being taught so much, it is being examined in biology paper 1 on disorders, which are as a result of maybe gene mutation, chromosomal mutation. You agree with me, teachers, that this concept of non-disjunction is very abstract to our learners, despite the fact that some of us have struggled even to use ICT integration. That is why you will find our learners cramming disorders of those various, they cram symptoms of those various disorders, and at the end of it all, they get mixed up. They cannot be able to relate those symptoms to the conditions themselves, simply because what we are doing in class, our learners cannot now move out of class and see what they are seeing outside the class. I know there are some of the disorders that may be common in the people who are around where those students are. But of course, we are not going to point at those people, but it is good that we take time and let our learners know what is happening outside the classroom. So we are saying that the present exam does not only expect the students to cram the concept, but they are expected to apply that concept they have learned to real life situation. That now brings us to the end on the second part of our presentation. I want us to look at the last part of our presentation on the reasons why, the next slide, reasons why we have our candidates not scoring in biology paper 1. That all of us teachers, we know even from our experience, when we give our students an exam, biology paper 1, we have observed that this is the paper where they are doing very poorly, simply because this is a paper where the candidates are expected to either know or they do not know. They ought to have mastered the content and mastered it very well in order for them to be able to answer those questions set in biology paper 1, as opposed to what you have in paper 2 and 3. And there are several reasons as to why we have our students not scoring in biology paper 1. One of them is because they are poor mastery of content, or they simply lack the biology content. And this one has been observed in several cases. As we mark the exam, you teachers, you are also examiners. So in fact, you are the ambassadors of the examiners in your schools, that you have seen that our students normally make wrong spelling of technical terms. And these students of ours have really accused us biology teachers of being very strict in marking, but they should be made to know that everyone has a meaning and a feeling, such that when you misspell a certain terminology and it has another different meaning, it means that it has now changed from what you intended to talk about. There are certain areas where we really emphasize on spelling mistakes, and some of the areas are, for example, when the candidate is talking about a disease like malaria, every disease should start with a capital letter. So if it is not starting with a capital letter, there will be an issue there. When you come to all the taxonomic ones, like maybe class Insecta, Kingdom Plantae, Animalia, and so forth, they should start with a capital letter. And other than starting with a capital letter, those taxonomic ones must be correctly spelled. We have other terminologies that are normally misspelled by the learners, whereby somebody wants to talk about the liver, the role of the liver in homeostasis. There's a time when that test was set, and there are some candidates who really messed up with that. I don't know where the R came from in their work. They talked about the role of the river in homeostasis. Students will talk about the root air instead of the root hair. I think that is because of where they come from. Then you have maybe students want to talk about the lumen in the blood vessels. The lumen, sorry, air, the lumen in the blood vessels, and instead they talk about the lumen in the four-chambered stomach of the ruminants. Then mother tongue interference again, georecus, they interchange it to be geolecus from the one lake. We have another terminology, ileum, which is part of the alimentary canal, and the ileum, which is part of the one of the bones in the pelvic girdle. So when the student is talking about the ileum of the alimentary canal, and they talk about the ileum of the bones, they will not call that. Then we have thymine, the nitrogenous base that you find in DNA. If the student talks about thiamine, we met thiamine in Form 1. And strangely enough, not many students will appreciate that they have met thiamine in Form 1 simply because of our methodologies of teaching again, where because we want to rush and cover Form 1 syllabus, how we normally approach that based on the uses of the various vitamins in our body. We assume that they did that work in primary school. We tell them to copy that table, and then we are very happy we have completed the syllabus, so that the following year we move to Form 2 work. So not many students will appreciate that they have met thiamine, and thiamine is a derivative of vitamin B6. The other evidence of wrong terminologies in answering questions, move to the next slide, is because students use wrong terminologies when they are answering questions. The wrong terminologies, of course, is as a result of the wrong content, whereby you will find the students still talking about the cold blended when they are supposed to talk about the polythermic, warm blended when they are expected to talk about homeothermic. And my dear colleagues, it's important that we instill to our learners that these two terminologies have become very common in the exam. Let them be able to master them and understand when to use them. Then out of careless mistakes, students will talk about red cells instead of talking about red blood cells. We have talked about to our students that you don't kill enzymes, but still they will continue talking about our temperature killing enzymes. Then carbon dioxide instead of carbon dioxide. Students will talk about blood lacking oxygen, and yet you know it is not possible to remove all the oxygen from the blood. Therefore, we talk about blood with less oxygen. Then students will talk about anemia being caused by lack of iron instead of deficiency of iron. Then we have others like germs instead of pathogens. Another evidence, next slide. We have our students not able to distinguish between the singular and the plural when they are writing their work. And the singular or plural are normally tested in two ways. One, it may be a diagram that the candidates are provided with, then they are told to label the parts of the diagram, or it could be in the stem of the question. For example, name a cell organelle. When they are told to name the cell organelle, definitely that is in singular form. There are certain terminologies whereby the examiner has noted students have a problem in, and these ones are frequently tested in the exam in order to check whether they are keen to know when to use singular or plural. One of them is mitochondrion, singular. Then we have vertebrae, singular, alveolus, hyphae, trachea, flagellum. There are many more axes, right? Second reason as to why we have students performing poorly in biology paper 1 is because they do not understand the terminologies used in setting questions in the biology exam. And in biology, you don't have many terminologies. There are quite a few. We have terminologies like define, state, mention, give, list. All those terminologies mean the same thing, that the student is required to recall what they learned without any explaining. When you look at naming, although we might see as if naming means the same as defining, we need to understand that when students are told to name in an exam, this question should be understood by the student very well because, one, they need to note that as they give that name, the name must be written in full. Next, as they give the name must be correctly spelled. As they give the name, if it is a scientific name, the genus name must be capital letter. Species name should be start with a small letter. So genus name should start with a capital letter. Genus, species name, small letter. And then once they do that, they can now say that they have answered the question adequately. The other terminology is distinguish, differentiate. And let us emphasize to our learners that in such questions, they need to be very keen when they are distinguishing or differentiating. And in most cases, the best way of answering these questions is to make use of a table whereby you have 2 columns and then they compare the 2. Describing, explaining, and outlining, that is the same thing where the student is expected to understand the content and then they explain in their own words. Accounting, we have said that we have the marks being awarded in stages. And if, for example, if it is a graph or an experimental setup, they should first of all give the observation, unless if it had been tested previously in the other part of the question. Calculating, another area where students have a problem, and we have been awarding marks since 2017 on the formula which the candidate has given. Then the second step, if the question is carrying 3 marks, we have the other method on substitution of the figures which have been given together with their units, and then the final answer. Please let us tell our candidates that the fact that they are using calculators to do the calculation should not make them not to score the answer through what they write. You find that most of the students, when they get the figure from the calculator, instead of writing what they get, they approximate and write the final answer. When they do that, they will miss the mark for the final answer. If the question is carrying 2 marks, again, we have 1 mark for the formula. The other 1 mark will be shared on the substitution and the final answer, so that now the final answer, the mark for the final answer will be given if the substitution of the figures in the formula has been made. We move to the next slide on the other reason as to why students do not pass in biology paper 1. It is because our candidates use terms in a mixed up manner. And why do they use terms in a mixed up manner? It is simply because our learners have not understood the content or the concepts. They have just crammed what they have seen from maybe past papers, what their teacher gave them, and at times, because even they don't write what you see. Strangely enough, if you look at what our learners are writing and what you are telling them, you find very different things. So they end up writing wrong definitions, and yet we are giving them correct definitions. This area is normally tested in the following topics, whereby it has been observed that we teachers probably have not been able to instill a lot of content in our learners through or as a result of how we teach. Topic on cell physiology. If you look at the past papers, you'll find that there are certain questions that have always been repeated year in, year out. For example, on the definition on distinguishing between hemolysis and plasmolysis. Simple definition like osmosis. If you take time and give your candidates this particular question, you'll be shocked to see what they are giving, because like in hemolysis, there are certain key ones that the candidate must capture in order to score the mark on hemolysis. That one, the candidate must talk about the red blood cell. It is the one that is hemolyzing. Any other animal cell will not hemolyze, which therefore means that if the candidate response does not contain the term red blood cell, marking stops there on the definition of hemolysis. Then we have the type of the solution where the cell has been placed, hypotonic solution or really concentrated solution. The students must capture the process. We have this process of osmosis that is taking place. The candidate must also talk about the direction of the movement of the water molecules. Then finally, the student must talk about the fate of this cell. It is going to swell and finally burst, something that is not captured by our candidates. Another topic is excretion and homeostasis. Students will not distinguish between excretion, secretion, excretion, and ingestion. Then we have ecology. We have all those terminologies, ecosystem. Then we have population and many others. Reproduction in plants, especially on the terminologies that are used in describing flowers. If you did not show your students, for example, what a monocarpous flower is, what a polycarpous flower is, it will even become very difficult for them to distinguish between apocarpus and syncarpus. They need to see. If you're in a place where, for example, you do not have those flowers, we are talking about ICT integration, can easily do that. The other area is on genetics, and then we have evolution, where our students will not know the difference between homologous structures, analogous, convergent evolution, divergent evolution. So we need now to let our students master the content in those areas so that they can know when to use them. Let's go to the other reasons. The next slide. We have other reasons as to why we have our students performing very poorly in biology paper 1, and it is because when they skip those questions, they will skip those questions that are dealing with the tables, diagrams, and graphs. A good example is what was said in 2017 in biology paper 1, where students were given a question from that table in standard question number 15, topic on genetics. You will find that majority of the students just gave up. They never attempted those questions, and this gave us an impression that these students normally skip tables when they are revising their work. We've already said that tables, diagrams, and graphs are areas that are going to give our students exposure on how to answer questions on high order thinking skills. Another reason is that our students are not able to answer timed questions. This is something we have emphasized to them, that if you have maybe a question with part A and B, and the response that you give in part B depends on what you gave in part A. In biology paper 1, we normally encourage our students to leave a blank for part A if they are not sure of it, and then they answer part B. But despite all what we have been telling our students, because I know we have quite a number of other examiners in this forum, biology paper 1, you have seen that students end up answering tidy questions, part A of tidy questions, even when they are not intending to do that. Why? It is because our students think that when they are answering questions in the exam, they must keep on holding the pen. And the moment the student is holding that pen and the pen is touching that space where the student is expected to make the response, you find that even if the candidate now does not write anything there, because of that presence of dots, when we are marking, we normally interpret that this dot is the response for the candidate, and therefore what we do is that we circle the response very quickly, We go to part B, which is tied to A, and we give across, even without reading that. Another reason, it's because our candidates are not able to work out simple arithmetic calculation, and this is, of course, due to negative attitude towards mathematics. So as biology teachers, please let us assist the mathematics teachers to ensure that our students change their attitude towards mathematics. Similarly, even when it comes to English, those teachers who teach English, please, we also need to work with them, because once our candidates are poor in English, it is also going to translate to our candidates not understanding the information, not understanding the content, or even not understanding the statement of the questions that they are given in the exam. Then, another reason, we have candidates giving incomplete answers. Please, let us train our candidates, just as we have always done, through giving them several questions, and then they get to understand that an incomplete response is not going to earn any mark. That is why we all need to know, and I know we know that in biology, paper 1, even if the candidate gives a response that is very near the answer, as long as the answer is not correct, we are not expected to give them half a mark. We don't have half marks in biology paper 1. The other reason, we have most candidates, they are not able to relate the structures to functions. And the moment, for example, the student cannot be able to relate this, for example, this is normally set in questions on adaptations. For the candidate to score, if that question on adaptation is earning 1 mark, they need to know that this 1 mark will only be scored if, 1, they mention the feature, the modification, and the significance. Those 3 must be there in order for them to score on that 1 mark if the question is carrying 1 mark, and it is expecting them to relate the structure to the function. Other reasons for poor performance, paper 1, you find that our students use negative ones. Next is okay, there. They use negative ones when they are answering questions, especially when answering questions where one is expected to compare. If they are expected to compare, they must give the other alternative, not negative or statement on what they are already given. The other reason, we have our students using abbreviations instead of names. I've already mentioned that. That is why, for example, in that question where students are told to name the products of anaerobic respiration in plants, that question appears very easy to the students, and the students very quickly will talk about the CO2, ATP, and ethanol. I know it's because they don't remember the chemical formula of ethanol very well, and that's why they will write the one ethanol, CO2, and ATP. They will not score that, especially if it is carrying 1 mark. If it is 3 marks, they are lucky because they score 1. But if it is 1 mark, they will not score any mark because CO2 is not a name, ATP is not a name. Then the other reason, they are not able to write scientific terms properly. We have seen when we are writing scientific terms, we have genus name starting with a capital letter, species name starts with small letter. Those names must be correctly spelled. Then they should be underlined separately. And of course, previously, we have been ignoring this last condition. We normally say, if the candidate has been able to meet the first 2 rules, in most cases, we are warned even if they have not underlined the genus and the species name separately. Our students know that. We have told them. But still, you will find them having a lot of problems in writing small letters, capital letters, of certain letters. We have the commonly tested letter being letter M. Our students, some of them, I do not know whether it is out of ignorance or why, they will not know how to write capital M, small m. They will not know how to write capital P and small p. So I do not know what the problem is. So you can see now what Wrong content means when the students have not mastered the content properly, it is affecting several areas. Then we are saying that the reason students are not able to answer questions involving differentiating, distinguishing properly. Those are just a few of the reasons as to why we have our students performing poorly in biology paper 1. But I'm just saying that despite all that, we as biology teachers, we should not give up in what we have been doing in our schools. I know some of us might have been demoralized, especially in a school where we are buying of the grains, because whereas the agriculture teacher is carrying a big envelope full of 1,000 K notes, you are carrying nothing because maybe your best student got C+ or C-. Let us not give up. Let us do our work the way we have been doing it. And our God is going to pay us for what we have been doing. Let us remain curriculum implementers in our school, despite what is happening. And you must be their consultant in biology. Since that is your area of specialization, we need to be mentors. We need to mentor these students of ours. Let us be role models. Sometimes you also find that our students give up as they learn. Let us motivate them.
Wow, that was a very nice presentation. Thank you so much, Madam Teresia. I think you can, okay, we can take some few questions. Huh? I see there are some teachers with questions. And then Madam Teresia will tell us more about the top-notch KCSE books. They are very nice. They are good books. And I would personally advise teachers to get them for the learners. She will guide us on where we can get the books, how they can be delivered to us, and the pricing. So before she can do that, I think we can take some few questions. If you have a question, kindly ask. Just unmute and ask your question, please.
Hello, good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm Ezekiel.
Yes, Ezekiel.
My question was,
yes.
And first of all, before you, in fact, I asked my question. Thank you, Madam Teresia. That was a very good presentation. My question was on the area of graphs, these hanging graphs, because some of them are not starting at the origin. Do we leave them hanging or what do we do about it?
I'm back. I'm sorry I was off.
Okay.
I'm sorry for that. Can I now continue?
Yes, no worry. I was asking
I am back
on the area.
now.
On the area of graphs, there is this issue of hanging graphs. So do we change the origin in a certain way so that the graph may not hang, or should we just leave it hanging? Then on the other part that I would like us maybe to get assisted on how we can get your presentation. It was such a good presentation.
Yeah. Richard.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. I'm sorry I got lost when I was almost concluding.
No problem.
Maybe you can now allow me to finish, and the person who is maybe projecting can just show the last slide.
Okay.
We have, I was on the bet on achieving good results, where I'm saying that as teachers, we need to focus on achieving, on getting good academic results. And this is through our demonstration of excellence in character formation in our students. Then we need to market our knowledge to the learners. You as a biology teacher, we need to compare yourself with a shopkeeper. If, for example, you look at maybe a certain town, we have several shops that are selling same commodity. Maybe, for example, you can take something like sugar. Those shopkeepers, the amount of sugar that each one of them sells will depend on how much this shopkeeper is able to market the commodity to the customers. So you as the biology teacher, you need to market your biology to the learners so that you can attract more students towards maybe doing the biology or learning biology. And I'm saying this because when you look at a subject like mathematics, English, and Kiswahili, they are normally given assignments on daily basis. But when you look at biology, we normally attend, for example, Form 3 and 4, you attend those classes 3 times in a week. So as biology teachers, maybe we can also ensure that we give them assignments every day. Even if we are not able to mark, at least it is going to instill to our learners that. Then we are saying we download everything that we have in our mind, and then we die empty. But in short, let us encourage our learners to be biology preachers, where they should be able to pick one verse from the book of biology, apply whatever situation they are, and give a sermon on it. And then lastly, as I said, I am an author of biology books by name Top Notch Books, where I have written quite a number of books. You will find me. Those are my contacts. Mobile website, Facebook, and then to view my catalog, you can also check that. And then maybe you can have a look at some of the books that I have authored. We are, for example, from biology paper 3, we have practical manual there. Biology paper 2 on nurses. And what is unique with the biology paper 3, can give me time, I just explain. We have the first part, which is a guide on what is commonly tested in biology paper 3. Then we have section A or part A, which is now a summary of all the topics from Form 1 to Form 4, full color. And I've learned a lot of emphasis on this topic on classification, especially on dichotomous key, where most of the photographs that you find there are photographs that I've taken from within the area where I come from. Then we have topically arranged questions from paper 3. Then at the end of it all, we have the suggested answers. Somebody might ask, how come that I'm an examiner in paper 1 and I'm writing a book in paper 3? I want you to note that we do not have monopoly of knowledge. We normally share with other examiners. We have a lot of input that has been given by various examiners, who even senior examiners in biology paper 3. Paper 2, we have on the essay writing, whereby first of all, I have described what the student needs to know when they are writing a biology essay, common mistakes that the students make when they are writing biology essay. Then we have summary of commonly tested topics in the essay, whereby at the end of every topic, I have given suggested essays. And then at the end of it all, we have now the answers. And what is very unique with the marking scheme or the answers to the essays is that I have tried to highlight the marking point by using semicolon, which represents now the marking scheme, the marking point in biology. Next slide. Then we have the quick review. We have for paper 2 compulsory question number 6, top-notch KCSE Biology data analysis book. Again, I have looked at the common mistakes that the students make, and then we have summary of the topics that are commonly tested in that compulsory question. Then at the end of every topic, we have suggested data analysis questions, and then at the end of it all, we have the graphs, whereby in order to emphasize some of the skills, especially on the skill, we have quite a number of the graphs that have been manually drawn. Next slide. Then we have quick revision series from Form 1 to Form 4. And I'm calling these books quick revision because you'll find that when, for example, you look at quick revisions for Form 1 quick revision, an example, a topic like cell physiology. I have tried to capture all the areas which are covered in that topic of cell physiology in the order in which the topics, the content follow in the entire topic, which therefore means that, for example, if you have a very weak student, you know your students very well, I would advise you, at least for the quick revision purposes, those students, maybe they are very weak, they can concentrate with what is not very difficult for them. The same with Form 3 and Form 4. That is what I have. Then I've also partnered with a teacher in agriculture. In fact, not even partners, but he has published through me, and we have written a revision book for agriculture paper 1 and paper 2. And lastly, my school has been doing very well in science and engineering fair. We hope that we'll have those activities, co-curricular activities, getting back very soon. We are participating up to the international level. And in fact, I have come up with a small manual, which is trying to highlight on the steps that maybe a student needs to take in order to come up with a very good project. Otherwise, my dear colleagues, despite the challenges of the network, let me take this opportunity to thank you for your patience. And I believe we have been able to share a bit, and it is my hope that we shall continue sharing. Thank you.
Madam Teresia, we had some teachers who had some questions.
Maybe they can ask again.
Okay. Just unmute and ask your question.
Yes.
So thank you again, Madam, for the way that you have taken us through. Madam Teresia, that was good. So my question was the issue of hanging graphs. Do we leave them hanging, or should we have just the origin being 00, especially when we are dealing with years and ecology graphs? Some of them are just hanging, and when we give directions, then we are told maybe they were given other directions in mathematics. How do we deal with biological graphs? The other thing is I was requesting whether you could have sent us your presentation, or you can tell us how we can get it. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you for that one. Starting with the presentation, I think what I can do with the presentation, I can share it in our WhatsApp group. Then next, we have the issue of the hanging graphs. In biology, when we are drawing graphs in biology, this graph is different from what we have in chemistry, mathematics, or even geography, because you need to note that we are trying to represent some data from a biological process, which therefore means that you cannot indicate that there is a certain value that was gotten and you never did an experiment to show that. That is why if a candidate decides to extrapolate the curve such that it is not hanging, like what is normally done in chemistry, this candidate will not score the 1 mark for the smooth curve. So what we are expected to tell our candidates to do is, in order to score the 1 mark for the smooth curve, we normally start where the first point is. We join the points consistently without stopping anywhere up to where the last point is. Let our students know that this is not just a graph, but it is a representation of some data that was obtained when a certain biological process was taking place, such that in absence of the data, any biologist will be able to get all the information from that particular graph. So we do not extrapolate the curve. We leave the curve hanging, like in chemistry or geography, where they extend. Thank you. I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah, it has been answered. Thank you very much.
Any other question? Feel free to ask any question. If there are no questions then, we can have a teacher giving a vote of thanks. I think the presentation was amazing. I've never seen such a presentation. Let's have a teacher volunteering to give a vote of thanks. Monica. Or just tell us how was the presentation? Has the presentation helped you as a, how was the presentation to you? Just give a comment. Unmute, then talk. Okay. Maybe we are experiencing a technical issue, but no problem. Okay. So the presentation was cool. We'll share the presentation with our friends who did not manage to join us. And I want to advise you to get the top-notch book series. Yeah, they are very nice. They are written in a language that learners can understand and manage to master the content. Therefore, I'll also be sharing Madam Teresia's contacts so that now you can reach her, and now you can talk with her on how you can reach her and how maybe you can get the top-notch books. Thank you so much. And I think this year is a year of blessings. I want Talmi group to be very, very productive. We are teachers from all over the country. We have young teachers, we have experienced teachers. And we need to utilize that gap. We want the experienced teacher to impact knowledge and that the experience they have to these young graduate teachers. To those who have not subscribed, kindly make a subscription so that now we can afford to have such talks. Yeah, we managed to upgrade our Zoom meeting. You can see now we are going past 40 minutes. We can accommodate even up to 1,000 people. So thank you very much. I think I will organize another meeting. I'll communicate on our WhatsApp group. So thank you very much and have a lovely evening.
Same too.